I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're delving into the mystical and ancient world with Don Edward Cook. He is the author of a fantastic book. It is called Ithyanna, Last Daughter of Atlantis, Book One, How the World Ended Millennia Ago. This novel blends science fiction with legendary and biblical elements, telling the story of Ithyanna, an Atlantean scientist, and her desperate quest to save humanity from an impending global catastrophe. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put her in the spotlight today. We ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below the interview. Don, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is quite a world you crafted with Ithyanna. How did you come up with this idea? It's very unique, very original.
Well, first of all, it had much humbler beginnings. Back in 2009, I was a mature college student, and I made a capstone project called The Last Atlantean, upon which Ithyanna, Last Daughter of Atlantis Book One is loosely based.
Mhm.
But I set it aside and thought, thinking I'd use The Last Atlantean as my my calling card for hopefully get into the film industry. But after years of a lack of success in that field, and after years of Dad really encouraging me to make the movie into something bigger, I decided, well, why not make Ithyanna, Last Side of Atlantis? And I thought first, if the world of Noah was a lot like ours today, how would it be so? Not just because the morally decrepit state, but maybe the level of technology was not as rustic as Noah's day has been depicted to be.
Mm.
And I decided to make it more advanced, on par with us technologically in certain ways, above ours in others, maybe in certain ways backwards, but still ultra advanced compared to ours, but just as morally decrepit, with the same kind of vices and crises such as terrorism, political corruption, corporate corruption, economic upheaval, and impending disaster. And I even decided to take the prime minister of Ithyanna's day and make a hybrid of Ronald Reagan and Stephen Harper, our prime minister before Trudeau, and make him into someone with whom Ithyanna has some contact. Even taking the idea of the United Nations and making it into the League of Realms. So I
That,
took the world as we know it and Atlantanized it. That simple.
yeah, and that's what makes this feel so real is that you're taking real elements and Atlantanizing it, as you said, including using biblical stories. Tell me a little bit about your inspiration for using biblical stories.
Well, I got serious about my faith shortly after I graduated from college, and I read about the flood and some of the research that went into proving that there was a flood,
Mhm.
especially from my late pastor Howard Katz. He did extensive research on it, and he said that there was the continent, or there was only one supercontinent on Earth at the time. It was called Pangea, but more scientists are calling it these days Rodinia. And I decided to have Atlantis being the superpower of the day, blending all the best of the West. That is the best of Canada, the U.S., the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and having a monarchy, but having a federal monarchy, like I even call it the Federal Kingdom of Atlantis. I make, oddly enough, it's a mystical world, but it's also more pragmatically mystical. It's not
Mhm.
exactly nary fairy, but it is fantastic. And I decided to have even have Noah having a backstory to him where he was once what we would today call a foreman at an auto plant
Mhm.
or a hover technology plant, and even leading the Goodwill chorus. But then he saw how bad things are getting at ATI, Atlantean Hover Tech Industries, and he quit, became a carpenter, and then he just got so depressed about how the world was going, and God spoke to him in that grief and says, "Make me an ark," and all the
Mhm.
rest. And I have them dressed in simple rags and simple robes because that's the world they would have had to go into.
Right.
That's the way the world would have become when they needed to be. That lived so simply. Even making next to him, making an Amish farmer look like Captain Kirk or Captain Picard in terms of tech.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing storytelling, amazing world creating. Ithyanna is such a compelling character. She's both a telepathic wonderkind and a scientist. Tell us about developing that character and tell the folks at home a little bit about the challenges that she faces in her journey.
Well, the challenges she faces are public skepticism and an increasing number of people who literally chicken out and go away from her. Even her parents, even her parents, that her dad and stepmom, eventually abandon her.
Mm.
Her husband doesn't because he still believes in Project along with his dear wife Ithyanna. But it's I actually base a lot of this on, in part, on loosely on the 1951 movie version of When Worlds Collide,
Mm.
and that was a great film. It was where the people who want to build that space ark also met with constant public criticism and ridicule. I even have a financial backer who's as duplicitous as they come, and literally, I have a lot of backstabbing in the book in terms of political and personal backstabbing and betrayal. A lot like our world today. And she's a brilliant scientist, and yet she's also got the same vices as many young women do have today. Kind of like a prissiness about them, obsession with selfie and using their calm crystals way too much. A lot of guys do it too.
Yeah,
A calm crystal in Atlantis is their equivalent to our smartphones.
right.
And you know how we have become a smartphone addicted culture. I would say if someone wanted to started a rehab for smartphone addicts, they should call it SA, Smartphones Anonymous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your book covers the theme of impending disaster and humanity's response to it. It's central to the narrative. Tell us a little bit of about what you hope readers will take away from this aspect of the story.
Well, where they I hope they get a sense when they read this book that took place a long time ago in our own Earth, but not the world we've known. When they look at it, they think maybe we have been here before, and this is just a today's world is just a scary case of deja vu
Hmm.
on a global scale. Because with today we have so many terrorist groups. Back in Atlantis, they had them all under one umbrella, the Spectralists,
Yeah,
causing even a riot at Ithyanna's grad ceremony.
yeah.
I
Very,
even use
very
the
interesting
yeah.
stuff. Very interesting. The technological aspects and the cultural backdrop of Atlantis play a significant role in your book. Tell us about the research that went into this imagined ancient civilization.
Well, as far as the ancient civilization part goes, I took the idea that has been often bannered about when it comes to Atlantis being an advanced civilization, and how many fantasy and science fiction books make it so super duper advanced that even space travel existed. And I even decided to have a Cold War between Atlantis and Lemuria. And if you look at it, Logan, the Cold War was what spawned much of our technology.
Hmm, true.
Yeah, and it's something that when you look at it, it just you have to think about it and see how we technologically made leaps and bounds between the time the time the ink started dry on the treaty signed on the battleship Missouri and the time Gorbachev's Russia fell apart.
Right. Right. This is
Leaps
book
and bounds.
one. I wanted to ask you, are more books to follow, or are they
Yes,
already?
in fact, I can tell you right now for sure that Ithyanna Last of Atlantis Book 2 will be out later on this year, and it's sort of Independence Day as Slaverhold.
Mhm.
It's even, I'm even going to let you know the title. It's called Ithyanna Last Daughter of Atlantis Book 2. Ithyanna versus the Slavers of Mortaxion.
Sounds
Deals
great.
with alien abduction, it deals with enslavement, and it has much to do about the enslaved as it does the enslavers, their faults, their foibles. And I have both obscure slaves and also slaves who were famous people in their day, but are now in chains themselves, such as Amelia Earhart, Elvis,
Hmm.
Jimmy Hoffa. Where are they? I mean,
Exactly.
who's do we know? Is that really Elvis's corpse in his sarcophagus?
Yeah.
And
Who knows, right?
even yes, and even a Black Pantheress who literally doesn't like anybody with skin lighter than hers.
Wonderful.
And I mean, a lot of people. I decided some mostly obscure, some famous names. I can't go into it right now, so I won't give away the ending. But I got three other books on the go. Ithyanna 3, which is set in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, the early days. And I'm working on a fourth Ithyanna book that I just barely got started. I'm working on a spin off of the Ithyanna series, too. I,
Wonderful.
yes. So I'm a busy
Well,
beaver.
that's great. I'm glad you're working to expand the series because it is a great book. Have you envisioned this as a film or a TV series, perhaps?
I could see this as a film. This The movie is a film, and the whole franchise is a TV series.
Hmm.
I could
Uh,
see that, and in fact, I could see you as the anchor person in the at the start, who gives the commentary about that talks about that's my angle.
Sounds great. That's my specialty. That is my angle. So that's good casting right off the bat. Don Edward
And I
Cook
even
is,
think about yeah, I
what's
even
that?
think about who would I pick for Ithyanna. Ever wondered about
That's
that?
a tough question. I think she needs to be an undiscovered actress. I think she needs to be
Yes,
somebody who doesn't bring baggage to the role, but somebody who is quote unquote Ithyanna, a standalone, and she
exactly.
creates the character. I think that'd be wonderful. Don
Yes.
Edward Cook has written a remarkable book. It is called Ithyanna, Last Daughter of Atlantis, Book One, How the World Ended Millennia Ago. It is a novel that blends science fiction with legendary and biblical elements, and it tells the story of Ithyanna, an American scientist, and her desperate quest to save humanity. It's a great book. It's a great read. There's a sequel that is coming out to follow this book as well, so you'll want to stay plugged into Ithyanna and her journey. It's a great one. Hollywood, if you're listening, this would be a great movie and a TV series as well. Don, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Great having you. Always a pleasure speaking with you. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.